All right, one of my favorite offseason predictions that I made is about the Detroit Pistons. I did say, and you can go look back on my feed during the summer, that the Pistons were going to see a lot of improvement this season relative to last. Now, did I think they were going to be this much better? No, right now they're currently sitting at the eighth spot in the Eastern Conference. Now they're tied with the ATL Hawks at that eighth spot. Both teams right now are 19 and 19, but that is a massive improvement after them literally being maybe the worst team in basketball last season. Massive improvement. I thought they were going to be floating around like that bottom playing tournament territory, and they still could end up falling in there as the season progresses. But right now, eighth spot in the Eastern Conference. Any other season where the play-in tournament is not involved, that's getting you into the playoffs, right? So let's look at the Pistons and act like the play-in tournament is not a thing, and let's act like we're not including the 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds as play-in squads. Let's go all natural, throwback. Right now, the Pistons are a playoff squad. Amazing stuff. And this is the first time where they've been a playoff team, and I felt confident that this is going to be a long-term thing, right? It wasn't going to be a surprise year and then it's over with. Like, I really do look at this Pistons core and their upside, and I think this is going to end up being a long-term thing. And I think the Pistons are finally here as a team that we're going to be looking at to improve season in and season out. Like, there are those really weird playoff appearances that they made, like in the mid 2010s, late 2010s, and everything, where they snuck in there and would lose really bad in the first round. You were kind of wondering about their future. This is the first time I've seen the Pistons perform this well, and I'm excited for the future, right? And I'm pretty sure that there is a lot of good stuff in store for them because they've done a great job at drafting throughout the last couple of years. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, right? Jay Ivey, who is hurt right now, but has been amazing this season when healthy. Asar Thompson, right? Like, they've done an amazing job at building up this roster, and they finally performed at a solid enough level this season. And again, it's early. We're not even at the first half mark just yet, but it finally feels like there is something to be excited about and hopeful about here in Detroit. Going to start here with Cade Cunningham. I don't really think it's a question right now as to whether or not he's an all-star. That's not a question. He's putting up some of the best all-around stats for any point guard right now in the NBA. I've always said this, the concept of a Cade Cunningham is really rare. When we're thinking about other point guards throughout the course of NBA history, especially like those taller type of point guards like Cade, there are a lot of limitations in their game, right? Maybe they can't shoot the ball as well or whatever the case may be. With Cade, there isn't a lot that he can't do on the offensive end. He is a three-level scorer, a legitimate three-level scorer. He does have some outside game. He does have an amazing ability to finish over and around the rim, under the rim, whatever you want to say there. Has great mid-range game. He's really creative when he's getting into that area. Once he's kind of like playing around and snake and pick and rolls and things like that, he's a legitimate three-level scorer as a taller 6'6", 6'7" point guard. Like I said, if we line him up with other tall point guards throughout the course of NBA history, he's pretty rare. And seeing him perform at this level this season has been just great because I felt like people kind of forgot about him a bit. This has kind of been a trend with like first overall draft picks of like the previous year is a lot of times they just get overshadowed by the next number one overall draft pick. So I use Paolo Banchero as an example. Paolo Banchero is obviously a transcendent player for the Orlando Magic when he's healthy. Amazing on the offensive end, does have a ridiculous level of upside, and had a very impressive rookie year. Historic in some aspects. Was amazing, but his shine was immediately taken away once NBA fans got a hold of Victor Wembanyama. And I understand it because Wembanyama is that good and he has lived up to expectations. But there is this thing where we'll like forget about the amazing performance of the first overall draft pick from a previous season and kind of throw it away because we're excited about the next guy that comes up. And that's not saying that there's anything wrong about being excited about that next guy that's coming up, but don't let it get to the point where that previous first overall draft pick who is performing becomes underrated. Like, there was a point where Cade Cunningham was a bit underrated, and I'm kind of like, he's a former number one overall pick, and he's always performed well enough individually when he's been out there on the court. How did he get to a point to where he's underrated? And a lot of that is because the attention immediately gets taken away the next season because we're looking at the next great thing, right? Only guy that didn't happen to recently is Victor Wembanyama, and most of that is because this most previous draft class just has not been that great. But best believe the NBA, once they get a hold of Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or whoever the case may be, some similar things going to end up happening to Wemby, where we're going to kind of, I guess, throw him in the back burner just a bit and start thinking about and talking about those other guys a lot more. And again, I get it. There's that excitement of seeing an elite level college guy coming to the NBA, and we always want to see the next great thing, but don't let it get to the point where this former number one overall pick, who has been performing well so far throughout the course of their career, ends up being underrated. And that's where Cade Cunningham was. He was getting to a point where he was underrated. And again, I'm like, how do you become underrated when you are a former number one overall pick and you've always individually performed well? Was he perfect as a player? No. And is he perfect now? No. But he's always been good enough since being into the NBA. I've never thought that Cade has disappointed, right? Like, we always know there's going to be a process and guys have to work on things season in and season out and have to improve. So there's that. But I think generally speaking, Cade has lived up and maybe exceeded expectations a little bit so far throughout his NBA career. Putting his season into context and the start that he's off to, right now, he is within that 24 point per game, 6 rebound, and 9 assist per game range on the season. Only players to do that for an NBA season in the history of the game of basketball: LeBron James, Oscar Robertson, Russell Westbrook, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and James Harden. So he is already getting into some historic territory with his performance. Again, super rare player when we think about guys who are kind of built like him, those taller point guards. Usually they're not that advanced offensively because they end up having some massive limitation, but that's not the case right now with Cade. Now, could some stuff end up being exposed in maybe a playoff series? Sure, but he is a three-level scorer at that point guard position. He is doing an amazing job also of distributing the ball and finding guys. One thing that I also talked about before was how much he was going to benefit from the increased spacing that guys like Malik Beasley would bring to the table. And you're looking at Beasley this season. He has been amazing from a three-point shooting standpoint. But Detroit did a great job at just adding more spacing around Cade. If you're going to have a point guard who can facilitate like he can, your number one goal is to put as much spacing around him as possible. Not just so he can get his own looks and create his own opportunities, but the offense is just doing better when there is a multitude of spacing on the court between those four lines. You don't win if there's no spacing. Simple as that. And Detroit was not a great floor spacing team the last few seasons, along with youth and some other stuff. That was a massive reason as to why they were losing games. The spacing is here. They've been a much better offensive group, and that's really a testament to their roster building that they did this offseason. So great stuff there. Again, they didn't make these monumental moves, but some solid moves here and there to just improve that offense and really tailor it more to winning. Again, you're not winning in this league if there is no spacing. Other notable performances, I mentioned Malik Beasley. There have been some great flashes this season from second-year guy Asar Thompson, who's been really impressive. Him and his brother have been off the chain this season with some of the flashes they've shown. Also, Jalen Duren, who I'm a massive fan of, especially like in the pick and roll or when he's sitting in the dunker spot. Just a really athletic throwback type of big where he's like, I'm dunking everything around the rim, and he really helps add an identity to this team, and he and Cade just play super, super well off of each other. Jaden Ivey as well. He was so good for this team when he was healthy. I was watching that game where he got hurt, and that was rough because he was playing amazing in that game. But he had an awesome start to the season after people were kind of doubting and questioning the fit between him and Cade. But he was great when he was out there. And amazing all around production from these guys. A lot of credit also to JB Bickerstaff, who, in my opinion, is top three in that coach of the year conversation. It's funny because he just got let go from the Cavaliers, and not because he did a bad job there. He did a great job with that team, but he got let go from the Cavaliers, goes to another team, and ends up being a coach of the year candidate. And the guy who replaced him in Cleveland also is a coach of the year candidate. Pretty interesting stuff where you leave a team and you're also a coach of the year candidate, and the guy that replaces you and takes that job over is also a coach of the year candidate. So pretty interesting stuff there. But Bickerstaff has done a great job at establishing a culture and implementing a system. And he's really good at getting through to younger guys. Like, one thing about Bickerstaff people kind of forgot about is before Mitchell got there, the Cavaliers were competitive in some years, right? Like when it was just Darius Garland and Evan Mobley there, they had a season where they were pretty competitive. They didn't make this deep playoff run, and they didn't make the playoffs at all, but they were a play-in tournament team under JB Bickerstaff before Mitchell got there. So he has a really nice way of getting through to younger players, right? And helping them get in the right position and setting them up for success. And he is doing it here in Detroit at a high level. So Pistons have been great. Again, new look offense, new look pretty much everything. Cade has been an all-star. There's not much question about that. The hope is that they can remain consistent. That's the hope, because we have seen these younger teams sometimes, a few, get off to these dynamic starts and they end up falling off a bit. And I don't want that to be the case here for this Detroit Pistons team at all. But I think they're talented enough and confident enough at this point in the season to stay afloat. Maybe they're not going to stick at that 8th spot out east, but I definitely think the way they've been playing, the way they're built, they're going to float around that play-in tournament territory for the entirety of the rest of the season. And who knows, they could possibly end up doing better and maybe ending around a 7th spot out east. Right now, with how wide open the NBA is, anything can happen. I say this a trillion times. There is no clear-cut favorite to do anything right now in the NBA, and this is a Pistons team that can find some success in that context. So we'll see what ends up happening. But amazing start here for Detroit, amazing basketball, amazing culture, and we'll see if they're able to remain consistent as the season progresses on.